All right, everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Embracing an API-First Approach to Accelerate Wi-Fi Innovation and Convergence. My name is Adlane Fellah. I'm the Chief Analyst at Maravidis. Before we get started, just some basic housekeeping items, which I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with, but we always get those questions. The event is being recorded and will be available in the next 24 hours. The handouts will be also available in the next 24 hours, meaning the slide deck. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar. We'll have a Q&A session after the presentations. And please tell us how we did. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a survey sent to you, and we do regular events and really look forward to improving them based on your input and feedback. In the chat box, there is a series of assets available to you, either to download or to subscribe to. So please take advantage of those. A few words about Maravidis. So we have been around since 2002, focusing on wireless technologies, based in Miami, Florida, with several partners in different regions of the world, depending on the project. We're pretty focused on private wireless networks, independent of the radio access technology, but are very well known in the Wi-Fi space with lots of work around managed Wi-Fi, which kind of brings us together today. Part of our approach is to look at the convergence of the different radio access technologies. And one of the biggest outputs that we have is the industry report that's commissioned by the Wireless Broadband Alliance, which is available for download. So the engagement takes different forms. One is the syndicated market reports, which was mentioned, commissioned by the WBA, but we also do a lot of custom research and lead generation. We are independent. We're not affiliated to any vendor or association, though those are customers. And so a lot of customers do value the independence. We're very proud to have accomplished 10 years of partnership with the Wireless Broadband Alliance this year. So we look forward to many more years of collaboration. So not to spend too much time on this, provide custom research, consulting, and that becomes the foundation for marketing activities in the forms of content marketing, webinars like this one, bespoke reports, research, case studies, etc. We've launched a newsletter 2 weeks ago that is sponsored by YBuzz. It's called the MSP Network Weekly Newsletter. MSP stands for Managed Service Providers. So you can use the QR code or the URL here to subscribe to. The newsletter provides insights and interviews with leading MSPs and is focused on connectivity issues. There are many definitions of MSPs out there. This is not a MSPs that provide, Microsoft database services. This really has to do with connectivity, whether it's fiber, Wi-Fi, DSL, or what have you. The agenda for today is I'll be providing some insights from an MSP survey that we did back in the fall, which results are still relevant today for today's discussion. Now we'll hand over to Bruno Tomas, who's CTO of the WBA, and we'll be discussing some of the aspects of the WBA's 2025 roadmap and how those are relevant for API first approach. And our discussions are very much in light of providing connectivity to a number of very important verticals, such as multi-dwelling units, hospitality, SMB, and many others that do require some form of professional management in terms of connectivity. Then last but not least, Wibels will share with us how they approach API first and what's different about them, and as they're ready to shake the tree. And then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. So without further ado, I'd like to discuss some of the results that we found from the MSP survey. So we looked at or got responses from 65 managed service providers, mostly in the US, MSPs, but also a combination of ISPs and BSPs and CSPs, and there are so many SPs. But at the end of the day, they all share the commonality of providing a professionally managed connectivity services. 72% are using their Wi-Fi or connectivity management vendor systems. The problem is most of them are not satisfied with those management systems or legacy systems from their vendors. And why? And that's mostly because they found them to be too expensive and complex to maintain. And we'll explain what we mean by that. In particular, 1/3 struggle to achieve a single pane of glass, which is one of the features most sought by MSPs, meaning the ability to manage different AP or switches or vendors from a single pane of glass, but also not only connectivity systems, but also business systems. And compiled to that complexity is the fact that many cite a lack of skilled personnel, or as one of the MSPs put it, committed skilled personnel, because MSPs have to compete with the high-tech big firms for those personnel, and it's very hard and expensive to retain, attract and retain those skilled personnel. So that adds up to the complexity. So in summary, challenges, vendor lock-in is one definitely that is seen as a big problem for MSPs in their ability to grow. And that's compiled by the lack of skilled personnel. Now, what's the current state? What are these MSPs doing about it? And we were surprised to find that the majority invest between 200 and 500,000 annually for customizations and integrations. So not only are they paying licensing fees and from their managed vendors, the Wi-Fi vendors, but they also have to have a bunch of developers in-house and spend lots of time and resources to tweak those systems to meet their own roadmaps and customer and market needs. We found that a bunch use a mix of internal and external resources, meaning there's some of them are on payroll, and some of the R&D activity is performed through external organizations. And again, this has to do with the ability to access external specialized skills. So ideally, MSPs would love to have all of their personnel internally, but that's expensive and that's not necessarily always available. At the same time, while they outsource, there are some risks associated with that, such as budget overruns and timeline not being respected. So the bottom line is that despite those heavy investments in terms of resources, the major issues have not been resolved. And so that is something ongoing. We speak to MSPs, operational people, and I haven't seen people as busy as these guys. I mean, they're always trying to fix issues and making sure to put patches and ensure that the MSP is running smoothly. And then, what's the ideal state, right? Where do these MSP want to be in an ideal world? And most of them say, we want to remove the vendor lock-in. We just don't know how to. We're so embedded with our existing vendor for so many years that it seems like an impossible task. So in terms of wish list, being able to integrate both connectivity systems with business systems is very important to them to enable their ability to grow. An example is if you're an MSP and you're acquiring a new property to provide multifamily connectivity, and it might happen that that property has already a legacy connectivity system. So as an MSP, you have either the choice to get rid of it or integrate it, and that's not even a choice. So that has to do with the connectivity systems, but the same applies for business system, whether it's a property management system, a ticketing system, a payment system, a security system. All of this requires heavy lifting in terms of integration. So essentially, MSPs want greater control of their own roadmaps and not be as dependent on the vendors' roadmaps. The smaller they are, the farthest they are in the line in terms of aligning their own roadmaps and needs to the vendor's own roadmap. And all of this is really aimed at one thing: to scale with confidence, thanks to more flexibility and control. And so that ends my presentation. I would like to pass it on now to Bruno Tomas, who's the CTO of the WBA, who's going to share with us the roadmap and programs that are relevant to the discussion today. Thank you.
Absolutely, Adlane. Very good morning, good afternoon for all of you attending the webinar. It's a great pleasure to address you on this relevant topic that, above all, during the years, our members have been trying to incubate, although encapsulated in different work programs. As part of my role in the WBA, working with our global membership is really to create bridges between different sectors of our industry and different companies that can come together. So really appreciate the opportunity to share a bit of our thoughts around API first approach. First things first, so the WBA, we have been around since 2003, and the first mission was really to create bridges between Wi-Fi networks that were standing in different airports. And it was not until some early standards were created that this interoperability started to move forward, and then some services were built on top. Up until today, the vision has been to still maintain Wi-Fi interoperable within its own ecosystem, but also with some external networking connectivity access type technologies. What we do, we really try to be practical. We focus on requirements and standards. Whenever there is a new leap on the technology, a new service being defined, we really try to help moving this to market. After we do the typical work on requirement standard specifications, we need deployment guidelines. So that's another very important component to create the puzzle on how we go to market and really drive adoption. Then, whenever needed, we come up with testing and compliance initiatives. So you just have new equipment, you need to baseline it against competing solutions so you can have a test plan and really make progress with some common data shared amongst the membership. And last but not least, we like to go practical. So we also organize end-to-end field trials. So this technology hosted in members' labs, in real-world scenarios, environments. We do lots of testing in cities, in events. So that's really at our core. Just also for you, those of you that are not so familiar with the WBA, we have different initiatives when it comes to industry verticals like connected communities. We have also Enterprise Connectivity Forum and many other programs. What I would like also to share today is the diversity of the WBA membership. And as I was mentioning in the beginning, we believe that it's only with common requirements that we can baseline some technologies really to deliver, roadmaps that can enable more collaboration and deliver this API first world. As you can see just here on this screen, even on our board, we have a mix of mobile operators, cable integrated, service providers, but then we have chipset, device, infrastructure vendors, internet players that all together are sitting on these working groups and trying to see which pieces, either more protocol level, more upper layers of the technology need to evolve and be agnostic to make things work. Practically, the way we see the roadmap and the industry evolving, the WB working groups have been stable for a while. So we focus on, of course, Wi-Fi as a baseline, but when we look into, for instance, 5G, all the topics around convergence start to rise. Then we also focus on IoT. Of course, Wi-Fi is the dominant technology when it comes to IoT, but then there are other types of flavors that we try to converge here. We focus on the next generation of the technology evolution for the Wi-Fi IEEE standards. Then we have, of course, the roaming, open roaming, some policy and regulatory affairs activities. And what I think this chart depicts is for every vertical, and despite of technology, lots of data is being generated. And it's very difficult for an IT manager of a stadium, of a city, of a transportation hub to come up with some common best practice on how we can operate and manage his Wi-Fi network, both in terms of the data, but also on things like improving the quality of service or self-healing. So that's a common denominator we are finding. So probably what I would like to do is just to baseline things, also comparing it with the cellular world, where we, the WB, have been keeping a very close relationship with partners such as the GSMA, 3GPP, and what we see on the cellular world is that there have been this movement of trying to create open APIs and gateways where the operators in certain countries, they can open up their networks and foster the developer community to build some services on top. And if we look to wireless broadband, either fixed or Wi-Fi, we can look at the numbers. So this is the prime way of connecting to the internet and using online services. As you can see, most of the time people is connected to the Wi-Fi. More than 80% of the traffic reported by ITU Analysis Mason is coming from fixed networks. There is huge capacity being delivered, fiber to the room, 10 gigabits downlink. And even in countries like the UK, you have 97% coverage of what they call super fast high speed. So lots of data, fantastic job trying to get the best, downlink and throughput back to the customers and dominating the overall, picture of how the breakdown of what access technology is delivered. What is maybe still missing is how we use some of our champion programs to create even more value. And I would just like to give you, 3 examples. One is open roaming. So open roaming allows this federated approach of networks being able to talk with each other when it comes to authentication and onboarding in a secure and efficient way. But if we just go a bit higher and we take, this approach to the way data can flow and services can be managed, this is where Wi-Fi industry can also make a really big difference. So if we are able to do like open roaming did, standardize on a certain framework where certain parameters are accessible to the external world, maybe that's where suddenly you see a much faster, go-to-market in services on top of Wi-Fi. It's common that we still receive the question, how can I return on investment on my Wi-Fi deployments? And that's either by monetizing it or by delivering services that come up eventually with indirect revenues. Another example is focusing on operator-managed Wi-Fi. I think Adlane shared a few data points. We at the WBA have been, championing this flagship program that is the operator-managed Wi-Fi reference architecture. Most of the industry players have aligned and come together to standardize on this, concept that we need the northbound and the southbound layers and some APIs to, handle the lower layers with some upper layer functionalities. I will not, bother you with the different technical components here on the screen, but maybe I would just focus your attention on one concept that is the microservices. Imagine in every single gateway router, independently of the cable operator providing the service, you could develop one app and then you download it on your router store, and it's common across a country. So that's a huge potential that we can drive as an industry. It has not been done yet. Of course, there are some solutions that address this on a vertical way, but by joining forces, definitely we can, make an impact here. We are now going into a practical phase of this project. So anyone interested on exploring how these APIs might work, the concept of the microservices and interaction with the middleware gateways, that's what we are focusing now in the WBA. Yeah, last but not least, I think we all acknowledge the technology cycles and the evolution of Wi-Fi and cellular. I think Adlane mentioned the topic of convergence. Personally, this is one of the key priorities for the WBA also during this year. We have always, focused on interoperability and convergence of Wi-Fi with different cellular generations. We stood as the sole organization pushing for some mechanisms that can make network deployments more effective. And what I would like to mention here on the concept of the APIs is, again, if we really want some densification and make things more cost effective, if we want policy control and some QoS for AI engines to really come up with meaningful data, even things like emergency services and sharing location, we really need as an industry to look into our stack and decide which components we should agree that APIs can leverage, and invest some common funding or some common time of your R&D to join the WBA working group that can help baselining what are the baseline APIs we want to promote as part of our industry. Well, these were 3 examples, and of course, time is limited, but what I did is just to try and overlay with all the projects we have on the radar for 2025. So every year, the WBA comes up with a technical roadmap that is proposed by the members. So this is all members driven. They come up with their proposals, their topics, then there is a voting. And if there is enough support, we just start these initiatives. And I was counting that more than 12, 13 projects this year mention open APIs and would benefit from open APIs within our context. I already mentioned a few. Maybe I will just do a quick mention to the MDU as well. So this is a big, new initiative that we just started this month. And the centralized connectivity management within an MDU environment is really critical. So we'll be trying to come up with these requirements and guidelines for starters, but we are really excited about it. And the other one that I would also like to mention is the QoS and the QoE related topics. We have around 3 programs focused on that. But in the end, if this data is available and some app developers can use them, I think that will be quite transformative if we were to augment the role of Wi-Fi within the global wireless ecosystem, as we mentioned as part of the WBA vision. So very exciting. I think this is the inception on what we can do related with this topic. We have an yearly process where at any point in time, new projects can be proposed. There are very knowledgeable technical teams working on this. So if you are interested, feel free to chime in, and we'll be happy to discuss with you how to blend some of your ideas into our programs or just drive them from the existing initiatives. Just to finalize, on top of engaging with the WBA, we also have events. So if you would like to join us and discuss some of these topics, we typically have 3 events a year. So we have an APAC, Americas, and EMEA. So we already hosted our event last month in Bangkok. So that's working sessions where people come together and discuss some of the topics we have on our roadmap. The next event will be in Dallas, Texas in May, and then we'll go to Paris in October, and we will go to Tokyo in January 2026. With this, Adlane, I think we are right on time. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll stay around with Magnus and Adlane for some discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno, for sharing the WBA program. So without further ado, next final speaker, Magnus Johansson, CEO of YBuzz. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me make sure there and share. You see my screen?
Yeah. Go.
Okay.
Good to go.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Adlane, for those comments. I'm Magnus Johansson, and I'm the CEO of YBuzz. And today, we want to talk about bringing what we call an Android moment to manage Wi-Fi, using an API first, then unifying hardware vendors, slashing R&D costs, and most importantly, handing back the control for the MSPs and not feeling as locked in as they have according to the survey that Adlane presented. So we think there is this big Android moment that is needed, the same way as it was for back in the day with the handset vendors, all of them having their own operating systems, their own app stores, and there was stagnation in growth. It was hard for anybody to develop anything on top of it. And that is the way today with the enterprise Wi-Fi vendors. They have their fiefdoms, and you kind of have to gain allegiance to a Meraki, to an HP Aruba, to a Ruckus. And then, of course, if it is that you want to merge them together, they all have their APIs and say, yeah, go ahead and build what you want. And those APIs, as Bruno mentioned, are not aligned. They are not open, if you call it that. They are their particular APIs. And it takes a PhD to try to bring them all together. So that is why we built our platform, and that is what I will talk about. And before I jump to that, I think 95% of the audience probably have never heard of YBuzz before. We are a new member to the WBA, but we are not the new player in the market. We actually came in fruition in 2015. And we have been working behind the scenes together with Ruckus actually since 2016. They were a reseller of our white label YBIP OS. And that is what has been powering 10 of the largest telcos in the US today, including AT&T, Cox, Verizon, and others. And we unified Ruckus' full tech stack, from customer care to NOC to ticketing to deployment automation, plus Meraki switches, Fortinet firewalls, IoT, private 4G, 5G, into a single pane of glass. And this, was an approach to try to bring together something that is hard to do when you have all these players. It's really hard to make them all play together. But when you have big companies like the telcos saying, we want our brand, we want to control this, we want to deploy on our timelines, we want to implement certain integrations, and then have a layer on top of the controller layer and provide those services function very well. So with that said, it's just to say that we've been around, and everything that we have built, everything that we have learned, we have forged into a carrier-grade version of the YBIP OS that is now made available to MSPs. So with that, I will take a short step back and just say that, what are the big challenges that Adlane talked about is the ability to not be vendor locked in, the high cost of integration that we talked about, the complexity that happens once you add more than one operator or with the software, etc. You're trying to build that single pane of glass. The lack of a unified management. There isn't anybody having that. Each of the vendors have their version of their beautiful interface, but it only works with their hardware. And then the biggest one is the talent shortage that we talked about. So I will show this real quick. It's a, here we go. On YBIP OS, we call it the MSP Builder Universe. And that is that we believe that any vendor can be managed if it is that you ingest all their APIs. And that is what we do. We take the APIs from all these enterprise vendors and we ingest them into our backend. And then on the front end, we have a unified interface. And we have built, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have built a lot of use cases, a lot of automations, a lot of different things that MSPs needs for small business deployments, for airport deployments, for hospitality deployments, for MDU deployments. And by having one user interface all mapped back to the different APIs that the different vendors have, you get this, before we have open APIs, you get this kind of feeling of being in control. And the third layer is that once we have done all of that integration, we have an API layer ourselves, so that anybody wants to integrate into the builders universe and leverage on all these equipment vendors and the solutions, there is a one-time integration to accomplish that. And one example of that is the work that we did with Altice and Optimum, is that they have Amdocs as their provisioning system. And they wanted to be able to just send a API into the YBus platform and be able to provision small business locations end to end, meaning that you will set up the MSPs, not MSP, the end users, small business, their portal, the SSIDs, the welcome pages, configure all the channels, configure all the everything that needs to be done, plus sending a deployment to the installation people to go out and install the AP. And with that, we managed to build those kind of automation, and that is now part of the platform. And just to say that this can only be done if it is that you have a dedicated team. So we are not saying the same way that the enterprise vendors are saying, hey, use our APIs or use our SDK and build whatever you want. Instead, we are saying, bring your tech stack to us. We have certain things already in there, the baseline, but bring your tech stack, bring your problems, and our engineers will be R&D on demand, and they will build this for you inside your universe. And it is I will come to that, but it is like a dynamic roadmap. It gives each and every MSP inside this platform the ability to develop and deploy at their leisure, and not having to wait for either the platform to be ready with a roadmap or the vendor. Instead, it is that by us managing all these APIs, we can build it for you and together with you. And the multi-tenant and multi-service layer, what that means is that there is an multi-access control for the admin, like us being the custodians, an admin layer for the MSP that onboards properties, creates all the plans, all the configuration, everything from one place. Instead of it being that you're going into different areas, you do it from there. And then, of course, the more fancy and flashy is the property level, where you can have a full view of the network at a big, this is the, I will go into an example of Jamaica, where you have a countrywide view, and you can drill down to a AP view at a specific school. And I will show that later. So let's go to this. And one of the key features of this platform is that it's white label. We believe that it's your brand that should be on this, and that is what most telcos and other wanted, is to be able to say, I'm selling my managed service. I'm not selling a Meraki. I'm not the reseller of a Meraki or Aruba or Ruckus. I am selling my service the same way as 4G, 5G. It's AT&T 4G. It's not powered by Ericsson, etc. They want the user to associate the service with their brand, not with the underlying technology, to allow them to use others. The other one is the ability to have built-in feature functionalities. And the way this works is that every new feature functionality that gets developed gets added to this builder's universe like a blueprint or like a building block. So when a new MSP joins, you already have 80% of what you need, and then you use 20%. We say the 80-20 rule, and you use that 20% to develop, to make it the ideal solution for you. So even though it is that you are in the, if we call it share knowledge, it is not sharing intellectual property, it's not sharing your secret sauce to your success, but it helps to speed up rollout and doing that. And I mentioned the dynamic roadmap, and I think that is a very important understanding, is that inside this, it is like a software, an OS, right? That inside your universe, you have the freedom and the ability to innovate at your speed. So instead of having to wait for anything, you can deploy when you need to deploy. And then it is the one-time integration that we talked about, that because we are managing this API layer internally, we can ensure that we know that APIs change all the time. And because we have close control of that and working together with equipment vendors, we know when they come, and we make sure that things continue to work and not break. And automation is the idea of that once you have a problem that you need to solve, and we build it out, we build it so that it can be scalable, it can be repeatable, and it becomes an automated thing inside of your builder's universe. So every CEO wants to be able to maximize every segment in a vertical. And for example, say that you're very strong in MDU. You have you are currently deploying in your luxury MDU, and then you want to expand into dorms or into low-cost housing. That's where the problem with cost comes in, right? If I cannot choose the type of vendor that I want and be able to leverage on the processes, the deployments, all the things that I already have, then it is that I always have to reinvent the wheel. And in this scenario where you separate, we can call it almost like cups in the mobile world, where you separate the control layer to the service layer, you can now deploy and add these services on top of any of these vendors that are pre-integrated. And to add another vendor takes us about 30 days to add a new equipment vendor into our tech stack. And the final part going through here is that the dynamic roadmap is available to all. The pre-built and pre-curated solutions are available to all. And it's been proven this universe, if we call it that, has been shared by 10 telcos in the US as described. And co-opetition oops, I jumped too far. Co-opetition is the no, I wasn't. Sorry. Let's see on the screen. Co-opetition is the way of faster growth, and that is the one of the key things of the YBPOS. And let me talk about the Jamaica Ministry of Education. So this was our first MSP after we moved from behind the scenes, and this was a major rollout in Jamaica. It was a MSP with no prior experience in managed Wi-Fi. They were an IT shop, and they had picked up a project that a company had won before COVID, and they were under pressure to roll this out in 90 days to secure some EU funding. And it was to reach 360 plus schools with 3,000 plus APs. And by joining our universe, where we already had the Ruckus integration and automation done, they could just get their branded solution up and running in 24 hours when it comes to setting them up. And then they could start the rollout and installation of the APs. And in the meantime, they needed some customization that the government wanted, and they wanted to integrate a second vendor. And at that time, we did not have open Wi-Fi in our platform, but we partnered with the Net Experience and Action Tech. And during those 90 days, we integrated them, we tested, and they could then roll out another 600 APs at the end of those 90 days to get a full dual vendor under one single pane of glass. So with that, I will say that if you want to, and we've created, based upon this 90-day success with Jamaica, we created a early accelerator program, and we have opened that up for this quarter for a few few MSPs. If you're interested, we would love to both demo this platform, because it's hard to get all across in a short presentation, and get you on to a demo where you can really see what this platform can do for you. And with that, I'll stop, and I hope that we have some time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Magnus. Very interesting. Obviously, I'm very familiar with the project, but I think a lot of people have a couple of questions, especially around this single pane of glass. You have mentioned Jamaica, where you onboarded tip open Wi-Fi on top of Ruckus. I think the first question that comes in mind is, do you manage RF between the two vendors in the same location, or this is a unified management system?
All right. Yeah, that is a common question. That today, each property is homogeneous, meaning that there is Ruckus schools and tip open Wi-Fi schools. But in our labs, we are taking the approach that there will be, as people want to upgrade, they don't want to rip and replace. It is that since we can manage and we are working with machine learning to be able to say, look, we can see and we know the configurations, since we manage the configuration files of the systems. We can know where the APs are, we know what channels they are broadcasting at, etc. And we can start to see, and we can kind of do what the companies do internally with automatic changing of channels. But that is in the labs, but it's on our roadmap of being able to manage across or manage mixed networks.
Okay, thank you. Another important question that comes is, okay, we want to get away from vendor lock-in, but we don't want to get into YBUS vendor lock-in. So how do you address that?
Yeah, so that is the idea is that because this is not for you to rip and replace your tech stack. It is really to install a software, if you call it that. We are not installing, but by integrating through APIs, we call it a virtual operating system. Is that we do not tell you you need to use one of our, we have a AAA, but we are also integrated with, for example, with Aptilo and with CloudPath. So if it is that you have a AAA, we can say, yeah, we can use both your authentication and your accounting, or we can split it where you use your AAA for authentication, but use our AAA for accounting. So with that, yes, you are the same way when you choose an Android or Mac or Windows. There is some lock-in, but it is not about forcing you to follow our where we want to go, because we are developing for you inside your universe, or whatever what we call it.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, folks, please keep sending those questions along as we answer some of them. Maybe another question for you, Bruno, based on what you saw from Magnus' presentation and your different programs. What can you tell us about how those potentially can impact the specifically like the MDU program you have? But what are your objectives there? How big is the implication of the MSPs themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I think these type of approaches and efforts to create these interoperability layers are very important. And maybe what I would add is most of the time some of the MSPs, they are having to embrace a multi-cloud environment and some type of automation, and different teams need to come together. And of course, those focusing on the access side might have a big task to just converge these teams when it comes to security, how you just have these different type of Terraform automated architectures going forward. So that's where maybe I see these agnostic type platforms that converge APIs from vendors and open the higher layer. I think naturally this is very aligned with operator managed Wi-Fi. So I think not every vendor needs to support APIs, but at least partner with someone with expertise and know-how, the concept of brokers. So that's where maybe I would see Magnus' perspective and solution becoming a broker of APIs for third parties, and then some of these companies can just gather that know-how. To your second question on our MDU project, I think there are a few challenges. We really want to come up with some recommendations how to best deploy Wi-Fi and integrate it with other radio access technologies, really to guarantee a centralized management and allow these different service providers to enable their offerings depending on their product portfolio. So very practically, we really need to come up with some guidelines that can be widely acceptable, kind of the architecture for MDU that allows us to automate processes and onboard, for instance, headless devices coming into the home. Then the authentication piece is also important. There have been, of course, some discussions on which authentication methods should be used, especially on tenants that have some rotation, how to have private PSK working. Maybe Passpoint can work in some situations, but yeah, there is some education to do there, and all those considerations will be part of the work. So architecture, network diagrams and best practices, recommendations, and guidelines. Yeah.
Thank you. We got a couple of questions that have to do with your pricing, Magnus. People are concerned, is this an expensive solution or?
Yeah, so see it this way, that if it is that the way we're pricing it is on the if we call it the not outsourced, but the embedded R&D, that today from your survey, I don't know if we've mentioned that, but on average, the MSPs that answer the survey, they spend between $250,000 to $500,000 a year only on the patching together and trying to reach the single pane of glass. And instead of being able to divert some of that money towards new revenue opportunities, service delivery, etc. And I think that's where we say that we can, because we have our live, we call it live SDK, our engineers that will take that heavy lifting, that you bring that to us. We do not operate like a black box outsource. We will embed with you and work the way you work, whatever PM system you work, whatever you do, and we will do that. And that has a cost. And we have on our website ranges of what that is. It's not cheap, but it is the idea of you will pay much less on using our resources for this mundane task and being able to divert that towards revenue. So see it as an investment versus a cost.
Yeah. But in fact, I mean, alongside that discussion of cost, we have a very interesting comment/question from one of the MSPs here. He says basically they're confirmed they're frustrated by their vendor lock-in. They're tired of our never-ending R&D. But they are asking, are you guys just an R&D outsource, or are you a SaaS service with per AP or per site pricing model, or are you both?
Yes, so we are we can call it, we are a little of both, because the live SDK is if we call it the software developing arm that built the platform and has been the brains behind the work with the 10 telcos. So that is software, but it is our IPR and our platform that we have built. And when it comes to the SaaS, we first were looking to SaaS, but then we're almost calling it instead a membership, to say there is the same way that WA has their membership, right? It's the same idea to say, if you want to be a member that takes what is there off the shelf and you want to buy, if we call it that, live SDK for specific task of integration, you can do that. And then there is a lower fee. And then if you want more of dedicated resources or shared resources, and then we will build. So the early adopter program is really that 90 days to say, if you commit to a 1 year, we are saying for the first 90 days, we work together, we find out what are the KPIs, what are the ROI, and after 90 days, for those first 90 days, you don't pay anything. If it is that we did not prove to you that this was working, we did not see that you can save money, you can walk away. And because we are not taking away from your day-to-day, since you don't move things over into us, you move the things that you want to move. We are not stopping your progress. So that is a lot of times MSPs feels, okay, I have to stop and work with you. No, you can use us as that behind the scenes that are doing this and prove to you. And so that is our risk-free guarantee to work with us.
Okay.
And that is what MS Tech did in Jamaica. In getting this out in 90 days. And after that, they signed a 5-year deal with us.
Okay.
So
that we would love to have them on the show next time to tell us live, how the experience working with you has been. Almost at the top of the hour here, but there's always questions about, does YBuzz support Passpoint, for example, or is that indirectly through the vendors?
Yeah. No, so there's two things. We just joined WBA in the beginning of this year, and it is our thought process is we should be probably an IDP and be part of this as having that as a table stake in the platform. But the same thing is that if you, we call it the bring your own tech stack. If you have Passpoint, then we would embrace that and bring you in and leverage it that way. But we are not today Passpoint because we, like I said, we just joined and we are in the midst of working with WBA to add that to our stack.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. One is you mentioned Altis. Was the Altis work done in Europe market?
No, not in the Europe market. It was the US, the Optimum, Lightpath, and Southern Link.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess, in summary, it seems a lot of the audience agrees with the findings from the MSP survey. People are tired of vendor lock-in and endless R&D spending. I mean, I think people agree with the findings. Now, where I can sense some skepticism is whether YBuzz is the right approach to help them. And you're saying you have a risk-free 90-day program where basically they can play and test and learn working with you. So if you guys are interested, you have a link here to book a call with Magnus. And from my understanding,
Yeah, I
you
think
have
it
nothing
is.
to lose.
It's worth the time to take an hour with us to let us really go through a demo and ask all the technical questions, etc. It's hard in this. This is more to show that we've been around, we are real, we have done this for a long time, and we are now ready to enable MSPs to reach to scale with confidence, as you mentioned. To give them that. So I really appreciate the time today, and it was really nice to hear directly from Bruno, and I'm looking forward to bring as much as we can to the WBA and all the members.
Okay.
Well, yeah, thanks for joining, Magnus. That's fantastic. Let's work together.
Great. Well, I think with this, we'll end the show today. Again, you'll receive a survey. Please take not even a minute to answer. We look forward to your input. We value that. You have a bunch of assets, and please subscribe to our newsletter. We do this for you. And every week we interview a leading MSP. We talk about technology, business, regulatory trends. So we want you to enjoy it. Thank you very much, everyone. And till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.